Suluan is fleeing furious noble husbands when hundreds of monsters surround his caravan. The scandal cost him Colin City, his lovers, and every comfortable advantage he built. Fortunately, his game system grants experience points from combat and Xiao Yun's legendary abilities. Every enemy ahead is therefore both a mortal threat and a valuable reward. When the horde charges, Suluan personally crushes its strongest warriors with lightning. The victory raises him to level 12 and grants a rare silver treasure chest. Inside waits refined armor whose rigid body effect sharply reduces incoming physical damage. His humiliating escape has suddenly become the first step toward building his own territory. Only moments earlier, Suluan sits casually atop a cart loaded with valuable trade goods. A piece of straw hangs from his mouth, while nearby mercenaries mock his romantic disaster. They know he left Colin after becoming involved with Lady Elizabeth Gia. Suluan insists their relationship was sincere, poetic, and far beyond ordinary understanding. The mercenaries answer his dignity with laughter, which has become painfully familiar. However, the handsome wanderer was not always a shameless noble surrounded by dangerous women. 10 years earlier, he was an ordinary college student from the modern world. During an exhausting night, he played Rise of Empires 8 until his body collapsed. He awakened inside a fantasy world filled with magic monsters, steel, and constant danger. The body belonged to an orphan whose merchant father had been murdered by bandits. The boy's grieving mother died shortly afterward, leaving no family behind. Suluan inherited their tragedy, but he also brought something impossible into this world. The complete game system from his previous life now existed inside his mind. Fighting enemies granted experience points, levels, statistics, skills, and treasure rewards. He also received the starting abilities of Xiao Yun, a legendary warrior. Those abilities permanently increased his strength, constitution, movement speed, and attack speed. The Brave trait also raised the frequency and destructive force of critical attacks. Suluan quickly discovered that this world provided endless opportunities for aggressive advancement. He defeated street gangs, arrogant knights, and nearly every challenger in Colin City. His victories turned him into the undisputed champion of the local fighting arena. Gold accumulated rapidly, while influential noble families competed for his loyalty. They wanted him to become a formal knight, but Suluan rejected permanent obedience. He preferred freedom, profitable battles, and relationships that required considerably less paperwork. His appearance soon created as many complications as his supernatural fighting ability. The former Countess of Colin appointed him as her personal guardian knight. Miss Adele, Miss Mary, Lady Celia, and other noble women also pursued his attention. His crowded romantic life remained manageable until one disastrous masquerade celebration. During that private gathering, someone witnessed a compromising moment involving several noble ladies. The new Count of Colin responded with fury and ordered Suluan arrested. Since the Count wanted him dead, peaceful negotiation became rather difficult. Suluan entered heavily guarded Thorn Castle alone during a dark night. Roughly 30 knights tried stopping him before he reached the furious young Count. None remained standing after Suluan forced his way through the entire fortress. He then offered the Count a simple agreement that protected both their interests. Suluan would leave Colin, and the Count would stop sending killers after him. After emotional farewells, several noblewomen helped him purchase an honorary noble identity. He gathered his savings and joined a northern trade caravan under the name Suluan. That strategic retreat brings him onto the dusty road where the mercenaries now tease him. Their laughter ends when a distant scout suddenly races toward the caravan. Behind the rider, hundreds of dark figures pour across the horizon. Drivers immediately turn the wagons into a defensive circle and close every opening. Suluan rises from his cart and studies the approaching mass without visible fear. The leading creatures are Nola's towering dog-faced monsters with greenish-black skin. Their yellow manes whip behind them as they sprint toward the trapped merchants. Nolas possess enough strength and speed to tear ordinary travelers apart within seconds. They also gather in tribes that can contain several hundred savage fighters. Waves of goblins and kobolds run ahead as disposable troops for the main force. A single goblin is weak enough for a prepared farmer to defeat. Several hundred goblins become dangerous through numbers, panic, and relentless pressure. The army belongs to Yigis, a brutal Nole chieftain feared by his tribe. He seized leadership by biting through his own father's throat during their struggle. 30 elite Noli berserkers now march beside him as his personal killing force. Each elite warrior can destroy a small settlement without needing significant assistance. Ygiz confidently expects the weaker monsters to exhaust the caravan's limited defenders. His berserkers will then charge through the survivors and claim everything remaining. Suluan views the approaching horde through an entirely different calculation. Hundreds of enemies mean hundreds of opportunities to gather desperately needed experience points. Instead of trembling, he tightens his grip and smiles at the incoming army. The goblins and kobolds strike first, flooding forward like a filthy living wave. The caravan contains roughly 70 people, although only half are trained fighters. Archers release barely more than 20 arrows before the front ranks arrive. Guards fill the spaces between wagons and brace their spears against the charge. Goblins impale themselves upon the defense, but the creatures behind keep pushing forward. Suluan finds a long spear among the merchandise and climbs above the defenders. His enhanced attack speed turns the weapon into a flashing line of steel. Every thrust opens another throat before the surrounding monsters recognize his movement. Blood sprays across the carts as bodies pile beneath his elevated position. The Nolus remain behind, watching their weaker servants absorb the defenders' strength. For nearly 15 minutes, the caravan holds against the screaming mass. 2 guards are dragged from the formation and killed before anyone can save them. Their deaths shake the defenders, although the goblins are also nearing complete panic. Ygiz finally steps forward and releases a roar that silences the battlefield. 100 Nolis answer him and begin their direct assault on the wagons. Suluan's system displays the caravan's morale falling from 80 to 60 immediately. Faces turn pale, hands tremble, and spearheads begin wandering away from their targets. The guard captain desperately orders everyone to fight rather than die helplessly. Suluan has already jumped from the cart before the warning finishes. The flying horse ability surges through his legs and launches him forward. His body becomes a blur, racing through the remaining goblins and kobolds. Creatures spin through the air as his spear tears open a path. Their recovering morale collapses when one human charges toward the Nolus without hesitation. The first Noli bares its teeth and prepares to rip out his throat. Suluan's spear enters its chest and launches the massive creature backward through the air. Several others closed around him with spiked clubs raised above their heads. He answers by activating the technique called Spinning Cherry Blossom. 4 spiraling waves of battle energy explode from his rotating spear. Deep wounds appear across every Nole caught within the expanding attack. Heavy bodies fly backward faster than they charged, crashing into their own allies. Guards watching from the wagons struggle to understand what they are witnessing. They assume Suluan must be a knight of extraordinary rank and hidden reputation. Within several breaths, more than 30 Nolis collapse around his position. The defenders' morale rises sharply, while fear spreads through the monster ranks. Ygiz sees his confident army breaking and abandons every remaining trace of patience. He charges with all 30 elite berserkers packed closely around him. Their huge bodies shake the ground, but Suluan runs directly toward them. At 12 feet away, he activates his ultimate technique, Thunderlance. Power floods his bones and muscles as his entire frame expands violently. In 2 seconds, his height rises from 6 feet 3 to beyond 7 feet. Blue lightning crawls across his skin and wraps around the spear shaft. Static energy locks the nearest berserker's muscles before their weapons can descend. Suluan follows with storm rain, spinning the lightning-covered spear above his body. Dozens of thunder spheres burst outward across a radius of 30 feet. Electricity tears through fur, flesh, and bone before the gnolls can retreat. Charred berserkers remain frozen in charging poses before collapsing onto the scorched earth. Ygiz takes a thunder sphere directly to the chest and stumbles backward. His burned body survives the impact, but Suluan is already standing before him. The spear pierces the chieftain's throat and ends his rule without ceremony. Once Ygiz falls, the surviving monsters lose every reason to continue fighting. Goblins and kobolds scatter first, abandoning weapons and injured companions behind them. The remaining Nolis follow as their courage evaporates across the ruined battlefield. Suluan refuses to watch valuable experience points escape without making an effort. He pursues the Nolas using flying horse and kills every creature he catches. Several dozen escape by spreading in different directions beyond his reach. When Suluan returns, more than 70 Nole corpses cover the ground. Even greater numbers of goblins and kobolds lie around the defensive wagons. The familiar system notification finally appears before his eyes. The battle ends in a glorious victory after 258 enemy deaths. The caravan loses 2 defenders, while Suluan receives 1,457 experience points. A further 300 experience points arrive as the system's victory bonus. The accumulated reward raises Suluan to level 12 and unlocks new resources. He receives 2 attribute points, 2 skill points, and 1 silver treasure chest. His strength reaches 26, agility 28, constitution 25, and spirit 19. An average adult man possesses only 5 or 6 points in those statistics. Even trained soldiers usually remain around 8 or 9 after years of conditioning. Suluan therefore possesses roughly 5 times the physical strength of an ordinary person. His spear proficiency has reached 160, while sword proficiency stands at 156. Riding, archery, and throwing skills also benefit from years of relentless practice. His charisma reaches 18, nearly twice the level considered naturally attractive. That appearance earns easier negotiations, merchant discounts, and immediate interest from many women. His command statistic has climbed to 60 and directly strengthens soldiers under him. Normal troops usually break after losing around 30% of their numbers. Soldiers following Suluan can continue until casualties reach 40 or even 50%. His leadership therefore works like supernatural discipline reinforced by confidence and fear. Some game abilities also transformed unexpectedly after crossing into the real world. Repeating crossbow once summoned siege carts during battles inside Rise of Empires 8. Here it became complete engineering knowledge for constructing an advanced crossbow machine. Suluan built one capable of piercing knight armor from 100 meters. The same weapon once pinned a mountain bear helplessly against the ground. Unfortunately, it required 5 minutes between shots and moved painfully slowly. Its effective range remained limited while construction cost 300 gold nars. Suluan eventually dismantled the machine and sold its expensive components. Practical limitations can destroy even the most impressive concept brought from a game. Around him, surviving caravan workers begin treating wounds and collecting usable materials. Suluan returns without a visible injury, carrying the blood-covered spear casually. The caravan manager approaches with a nervous smile and exaggerated gratitude. He praises Suluan's supposedly selfless courage in saving every surviving traveler. Suluan places an arm around the man and immediately corrects that misunderstanding. He points toward the protected merchandise living workers and destroyed monster army. Saving such valuable property was useful work, and useful work deserves proper payment. The manager's expression passes through disbelief, fear, frustration, and reluctant acceptance. Nobles normally protect commoners to display honor, generosity, and respectable public character. Suluan possesses a noble title, but he has never accepted those inconvenient expectations. The manager studies the battlefield before looking again at Suluan's shameless smile. Finally, he produces a heavy purse containing at least 50 gold nars. Suluan takes it immediately and promises equal assistance whenever monsters return. Naturally, he also makes clear that the same payment conditions will apply. The manager realizes Suluan possesses enough shameless ambition to become an emperor. Meanwhile, mercenaries burn the remains of the 2 caravan guards who died. Their ashes are collected because the gnolls left almost nothing else behind. No one wastes effort burying monsters that scavengers will consume within days. Most goblins carried wooden sticks, while gnolly weapons contained only poor quality metal. The mercenaries keep what can be melted and burn every filthy piece of clothing. Once the road clears, the caravan resumes its northern journey under changed conditions. Men who mocked Suluan earlier now speak carefully and avoid meeting his eyes. Destroying 258 monsters has rapidly improved his social standing. Suluan ignores their respect because the unopened silver chest demands his attention. His system inventory contains roughly 1 cubic meter of protected magical storage. Inside rest 6,000 gold nars, 2 refined steel ingots in the chest. System-grade steel greatly exceeds anything ordinary blacksmiths can refine in this world. Even small quantities strengthen his current weapons enough to survive brutal combat. 2 complete ingots could produce several exceptional weapons for trusted future warriors. However, the silver chest remains far more exciting than those valuable materials. System chests progress through black iron, bronze, silver, gold, and purple gold ranks. Until this victory, Suluan had never received anything better than bronze. He opens the chest mentally while cheap, sparkling effects fill his vision. Beastface iron armor appears inside, forged from steel refined 100 times. The armor remains lightweight despite its strength and provides 15 points of defense. Its special rigid body effect reduces damage from incoming physical attacks. The item requires level 12, exactly matching the level Suluan just reached. Ordinary Nolis could now strike him repeatedly without breaking through its protection. More importantly, rigid body normally requires skill points to unlock separately. Receiving the trait freely makes the chest far more valuable than simple armor. Suluan spends 1 remaining skill point on the healing spell called Life Remedy. The basic version quickly restores a small amount of health after injury. Its next upgrade costs 2 skill points, forcing him to postpone improvement. The remainder of the journey becomes peaceful after news of the massacre spreads. Monsters and bandits observe the guarded caravan and wisely choose easier prey. Suluan appreciates surviving, although the lack of enemies slows his advancement. Basic training provides experience so slowly that another level could require years. Boredom eventually drives him toward a badly written night romance novel. 3 quiet days later, a dark structure begins rising across the northern horizon. As the caravan approaches, the distant line becomes an enormous fortified city wall. After 2 weeks in the wilderness, every traveler reacts with exhausted relief. They have finally reached Cult City, the northern province's greatest trade center. The settlement began centuries earlier as a fortress against barbarians and orcs. Its military foundation remains visible beneath the prosperity surrounding its crowded streets. Stone walls rise beyond 30 feet with watchtowers positioned at short intervals. Their placement allows defenders to attack invading climbers from several directions simultaneously. Engineers redirected an entire river to create the deep moat surrounding Cult City. Conquering the fortress would require 100,000 soldiers and extraordinary patience. Old scars still mark the walls, displaying past battles instead of hiding them. Above those scars fly the crossed swords and shield of House Savoy. House Savoy rules Cult City and belongs among Florence Kingdom's 4 great Marquise families. Like many powerful houses, its bloodline also supports a distant claim to the throne. Traffic thickens as merchants from several kingdoms converge upon the protected trade hub. Northern furs, Lurin gemstones, dwarven ironwork, and desert goods fill the road. At the gate, polished guards stand beneath an alarm bell ready for emergencies. The caravan pays its entry tax, presents documents, and rolls safely inside. Suluan enters with 6,000 gold nars and new armor hidden in storage. More importantly, no furious husbands appear among the disciplined city guards. He leaves the caravan and searches for a tavern suited to his preferences. Rather than luxury, he chooses noise-strong beer, cheap food, and careless conversation. Mercenaries crowd the room while barmaids control them through insults and practiced intimidation. Suluan purchases roasted lamb stew and beer after weeks of miserable trail meals. The first properly cooked bite feels almost sacred after endless campfire food. While eating, he listens carefully because mercenary taverns function like unofficial newspapers. Most conversations contain nonsense, but the remaining information reveals valuable local prices. A military-grade sword costs roughly 10 gold nars without magical enchantments. Half-body chain armor costs 70 gold, several years of savings for ordinary families. A house in the outer district requires around 100 gold nars. Full-plate armor can cost 500, forcing knights to inherit older equipment. With 6,000 gold, Suluan could equip roughly 50 professional soldiers. The same money could recruit hundreds of militia, although their combat value would collapse. Quality matters more than numbers when untrained men face disciplined steel and monsters. Yet Suluan has not come north merely to purchase weapons or temporary protection. He wants land authority, income, and a territory where no noble commands him. Birth cannot provide those things because his current body inherited nothing except tragedy. Military service might earn land, but every valuable region already belongs to someone. Marriage could provide a title, although his Colin scandal destroyed that opportunity. Swearing loyalty would bind both him and his descendants to another noble house. Only a frontier charter offers unlimited land without permanent submission to an established lord. Suluan finishes his meal knowing the wilderness can finally become his independent future. The charter allows its owner to claim wilderness territory beyond the kingdom's settled borders. Success brings land and independence, but failure usually ends with bankruptcy or death. Trolls, ogres, magical beasts, lizard men, orcs, barbarians, and dragons inhabit the frontier. That danger makes the charter unsuitable for cautious nobles, but perfect for Suluan. He leaves the tavern, cleans the mud from his boots, and approaches the noble council. The council earns enormous profits by selling charters, titles, and bureaucratic privileges. Revenue is divided between the crown and local nobles, ensuring powerful support for the business. Its enormous building stands beside the lord's mansion on a 3-level stone platform. 12 granite pillars support a great dome decorated with heroes and historical battles. Mounted bronze knights guard the entrance, displaying wealth before visitors even enter. A guard inspects Suluan's noble badge and escorts him through the magnificent central hall. The unsupported half-dome ceiling impresses Suluan more than the officials working beneath it. He passes an ironwood door made from material normally reserved for expensive shields. Behind it, a sleepy nobleman named Julian rests at a mahogany desk. Julian's face still carries a pillow mark when he hears Suluan's unusual request. Only a few frontier charters sell each year because nearly every expedition fails. 800 abandoned settlements already decay throughout the wilderness as warnings to dreamers. Julian bluntly explains that adventure novels cannot prepare anyone for frontier reality. Suluan accepts the warning but refuses to reconsider after coming this far. Julian produces an official parchment and demands 500 gold nars for the charter. Suluan signs immediately and places the heavy payment upon the desk. After weighing the coins, Julian stamps the parchment with the council's official seal. One expensive piece of sheepskin now grants Suluan permission to conquer his future. Owning permission is easy, but establishing a functioning settlement requires far more resources. He needs soldiers, builders, farmers, tools, seeds, medicine, weapons, and enormous food reserves. Almost no free citizen willingly enters monster-infested wilderness with an untested frontier noble. Only desperate farmers and homeless wanderers might accept such terrible survival odds. Therefore, Suluan decides to recruit workers and fighters from Cult City's slave market. He returns to the tavern for the night and travels across town the next morning. The market's smell reaches him before his rented cart even stops near the entrance. Mud-waste sweat and stagnant water create an atmosphere almost impossible to endure. Traders shout prices beside iron cages filled with exhausted people wearing filthy rags. Whip marks cover many backs, while empty eyes stare without visible hope. Low-level dealers swarm Suluan immediately because his clothing suggests money and noble status. They offer starving laborers who can barely remain upright without assistance. Such people might farm after recovery, but they cannot defend a frontier settlement. Suluan moves deeper, where cleaner workers and trained craftsmen command much higher prices. Farmers cost around 3 gold nars, while valuable specialists can cost 50. He memorizes those prices before passing several distractions that threaten his careful budget. Female slaves and beast folk tempt his worst habits, but survival remains more important. He forces himself onward until he reaches the section containing trained northern warriors. Barbarian soldiers possess enormous bodies shaped by hunger, cold, and constant tribal warfare. Their loyalty is reliable because every rival tribe is already considered an enemy. However, one trained barbarian costs 35 gold before weapons and protective equipment. Properly arming each fighter could raise the total expense to 150 gold. Suluan could afford only 30 equipped warriors while still purchasing essential settlement supplies. 30 soldiers cannot build and protect an entire frontier settlement by themselves. Then he notices an unwanted group standing apart from the market's desirable merchandise. The group includes warriors, women, children, and elders from one destroyed tribal community. They are berserkers whose rage ability greatly increases their physical violence. Rage also destroys discipline formations, strategic judgment, and recognition of nearby allies. Kingdom armies previously tested berserkers and suffered disastrous results from their uncontrolled charges. Enemy cavalry exploited the chaos and captured commanders while the berserkers kept advancing. Since then, most armies use them only for missions where survival is considered irrelevant. Their families make the entire group even less attractive to ordinary slave buyers. Suluan sees value where everyone else sees an expensive and uncontrollable burden. Frontier warfare rarely depends upon elegant formations or complicated battlefield coordination. Fighting monsters in forests and hills rewards raw strength, speed, and fearless aggression. Berserkers cannot ruin a formation when no formal formation is required. Their families also create a powerful reason to defend any safe home they receive. Protecting their children and elders could earn loyalty stronger than a slave contract. Their complete lack of market demand should also make the entire group extremely inexpensive. The desperate dealer beside them is a young merchant named Karn. Karn purchased more than 100 barbarians from another trader facing serious debt. He expected wealthy nobles to buy the warriors as intimidating personal guards. Unfortunately, every experienced buyer understood that enraged berserkers make terrible bodyguards. Karn now feeds 126 people while making no successful sales. His remaining money disappears every day, placing his new business near total collapse. The moment Suluan shows interest, Karn's desperate expression becomes impossible to hide. Karn initially demands 10 gold nars for every member of the unwanted group. Suluan reacts with visible insult and compares the berserkers to dangerous furniture. He turns away because a desperate seller must believe the customer can leave. Karn grabs his arm and immediately lowers the price to 7 gold. Suluan pretends he wants only adult warriors and rejects the attached families. Karn explains that separating them would destroy cooperation and make the warriors useless. Suluan claims he cannot afford feeding grandparents and children in the wilderness. When he begins walking again, Karn painfully reduces the price to 6 gold each. The families must remain attached, but Suluan accepts before Karn can reconsider. Keeping those families was always central to Suluan's plan for lasting loyalty. He pays 756 gold nars for all 126 barbarians. Karn accepts the heavy purse despite losing hundreds of gold on the failed investment. Contracts are signed, ownership papers transferred, and Suluan suddenly commands a small tribal community. He purchases an abandoned military camp on Cult City's neglected outer edge. The century-old compound contains collapsed roofs, damaged walls, and deeply weathered structures. Its location prevented redevelopment, but the original foundations remain surprisingly dependable. Suluan hires craftsmen for repairs while gathering the barbarians inside the training yard. The adult men average nearly 7 feet and resemble scarred mountains of muscle. 126 cold faces study their new owner without fear or respect. They resemble wolves deciding whether the person before them deserves obedience or violence. Suluan understands that northern barbarians respect strength more than promises or social status. He openly states that he purchased them and prevented their transfer into suicide units. The largest warrior steps from the crowd and towers above everyone present. He stands around 7 feet 2, covered in scars, and moving with unexpected grace. The giant suspects Suluan intends to use the warriors as disposable cannon fodder. Suluan points out that buying children and elders would be pointless for that purpose. The warrior answers that their families could instead become hostages, ensuring obedience. Suluan acknowledges the suspicion and explains his actual frontier charter. He needs soldiers to establish territory, defend settlers, and clear surrounding monsters. Once the settlement succeeds, every barbarian will receive freedom and full citizenship. The giant remains skeptical because slave owners can make promises without honoring them. Suluan offers immediate evidence by keeping their families safely inside Cult City. He will finance their food, while warriors may send representatives to check them. Their loved ones gain safety while the fighters help create a permanent future. Both sides also receive insurance against betrayal, desertion, or broken agreements. The giant accepts and identifies himself as Johnson of the destroyed Storm Bear tribe. Suluan introduces himself before ordering everyone to make the ruined camp livable. The barbarians descend upon the debris with astonishing physical strength and efficiency. Women carry enormous loads one-handed while children move weights that challenge normal adults. By evening, repairs that should require a week are already substantially completed. Suluan counts 35 experienced warriors among the larger support group. Even without rage, those fighters exceed the ability of far more expensive trained slaves. During rage, each could overwhelm 5 or 6 ordinary opponents in open combat. Florence armies defeat northern tribes mainly through numbers, armor discipline, and superior steel. Giving berserkers real equipment removes several weaknesses that previously limited their battlefield value. Suluan spends the following days purchasing weapons, leather protection carts, seeds, and tools. Iron armor remains too expensive, but the barbarians survived colder conditions wearing animal skins. He buys enough food to support the full group for an entire year. Nothing planted after arrival will provide a dependable harvest before the next growing season. His carefully accumulated fortune begins disappearing under the settlement's enormous startup costs. 10 years of arena victories and profitable relationships can vanish within 1 week of preparation. He also purchases proper clothing, so his warriors no longer resemble escaped prisoners. Cult City's crowds separate instantly when Suluan enters with dozens of enormous barbarians. Merchants become unusually honest while 35 scarred giants watch every negotiation silently. Each warrior receives steel-throwing hatchets and a two-handed battle axe. In barbarian hands, human-sized battle axes function comfortably as single-handed weapons. Rage still carries serious weaknesses that no major kingdom has successfully eliminated. Berserkers lose judgment during combat and suffer severe exhaustion after the ability ends. Their strength drops by half while stamina falls to roughly 30%. Many survive the charge only to die afterward while surrounded and unable to move. However, Suluan expects chaotic frontier battles to minimize those tactical disadvantages. After leaving supplies for the families, he departs Cult City with 30 wagons. 35 barbarians and a hired mercenary company accompany the heavily loaded expedition. More than 100 people travel northeast beyond farms, towns, and protected roads. The wilderness quickly replaces civilization with broken paths and endless hostile terrain. Local garrisons occasionally destroy monster groups, but can never remove them permanently. Goblins reproduce rapidly and survive upon almost anything, including mud and stones. Nevertheless, smaller creatures avoid Suluan's large caravan and its axe-carrying giants. After 5 days, the expedition reaches Blackstone City, Florence Kingdom's final northern fortress. 5,000 civilians live behind its walls beside a garrison of 1,000 soldiers. No farming villages exist outside because the surrounding wilderness remains too dangerous. Suluan continues beyond Blackstone instead of stopping beneath its limited protection. Past the fortress, roads disappear and human authority ends completely. Hidden creatures begin following from grass rocks, forests, and distant ridgelines. Their numbers increase daily as hungry scouts track the movement of the caravan. By the 4th day beyond Blackstone, more than 100 monsters follow behind. Suluan recognizes the gathering threat as an opportunity to test his warriors. His system has registered them as the Northern Barbarian Guard with 35 soldiers. Joining his command automatically upgrades ordinary militia into second-tier barbarian warriors. Johnson receives recognition as a barbarian champion and a valuable hero unit. Every barbarian possesses the strong trait increasing strength and constitution naturally. Second-tier warriors also gain rage-reducing pain while increasing strength and speed. Johnson's champion rank adds tenacity, greater stamina recovery, and the whirlwind slash technique. The barbarians lack archery skill but throw steel hatchets with frightening accuracy. Suluan halts the caravan and orders Johnson to remove the creatures following them. 35 barbarians charge backward without anything resembling a disciplined marching formation. Their long strides close the distance before the monsters can organize properly. 2 volleys of hatchets tear into tightly packed gnolls, goblins, and kobolds. Axes split skulls, open chests, and cripple limbs before the melee begins. Then the barbarians crash into the surviving formation like a living battering ram. Leather protects them from weak claws while steel axes cut through bodies repeatedly. Johnson enters the thickest cluster and spins his enormous weapon without restraint. Whirlwind. Slash leaves severed limbs and opened bodies across the battlefield behind him. The remaining monsters flee after witnessing the complete destruction of their companions. The entire encounter lasts only a few minutes and causes no serious human injuries. Every throwing hatchet is recovered because Suluan refuses to waste expensive steel. His warriors handle the weapons like sacred treasures after lives spent using crude stone. The system records 87 enemy deaths, no casualties, and 876 experience points. It also awards 1 iron ingot and raises the unit's morale to the maximum. Formerly cautious slaves now begin seeing Suluan as a commander worth following. 5 days later, the expedition stands hundreds of kilometers beyond the nearest major city. The frontier charter required far less distance, but Suluan wants room for expansion. No written limit restricts how much wilderness a successful charter holder may claim. Deeper regions offer greater territory, but also contain increasingly dangerous magical creatures. Stories describe settlements destroyed by large herds of fire-breathing earth dragons. Even-titled knights avoid such creatures, while only legendary warriors can challenge them safely. Suluan scouts carefully until 2 rivers reveal the location he has been seeking. The Red Sand River and Whitewater River curve around a raised central hill. Flat plains spread between them, protected by water on multiple sides. Centuries of river sediment have created soil capable of supporting immediate cultivation. The highest hill provides solid ground suitable for a castle and defensive command center. Fully developed farmland here could feed more than 10,000 permanent residents. Waterfish? Natural barriers, fertile soil, and elevated stone foundations surround the site. Suluan declares that the expedition will stop because this place will become their home. Tents rise beside the river, while workers organize wagons into a temporary camp. Fish prove so abundant that each successful catch reduces dependence upon purchased grain. Barbarians gather wild onions, ginger herbs, and other edible plants nearby. Their first fish stew gives the exhausted expedition a rare moment of confidence. Suluan watches the golden sunset and believes his impossible plan might truly succeed. Winter immediately reminds him that optimism cannot replace buildings, walls, and stored food. The northern cold will kill exposed settlers long before monsters need to attack. His limited population cannot complete a full settlement before the weather changes. Suluan therefore identifies goblins and kobolds as a readily available labor force. They may be poor fighters, but they can carry stones, cut wood, and dig foundations. After building a basic perimeter, he takes the barbarians hunting for unwilling workers. They attack every small monster settlement within 5 kilometers of the new camp. Suluan avoids unnecessary killing because living captives possess greater economic value. Capturing panicked monsters proves harder than defeating them during direct combat. He divides the barbarians and places Johnson's group along likely escape routes. Suluan's team attacks openly, driving terrified survivors toward the hidden second squad. The strategy gradually fills the camp with confused goblin and kobold prisoners. A kobold settlement containing around 200 creatures becomes the first major target. Johnson positions his warriors beyond the village, while Suluan leads 15 from the front. The kobolds mistakenly believe their numbers guarantee victory against so few humans. 2 hatchet volleys open holes through their crowd before the barbarians charge. Suluan activates his command skill and raises his warriors' morale to maximum. The kobolds collapse after several minutes of slaughter and attempt to flee together. Suluan stops the killing and drives them deliberately toward Johnson's prepared ambush. Exhausted prisoners hit concealed ropes, tumble together, and disappear beneath waiting nets. Surrounded by giants, most surrender immediately and press their faces against the ground. Several shameless kobolds begin helping tie up their own companions without being ordered. More than 160 healthy prisoners are marched back in linked groups. Connecting every 15 captives prevents individuals from escaping without toppling the entire line. Some captured kobolds soon volunteer to supervise the labor of their own species. These new overseers prove harsher than the barbarians and increase productivity significantly. During the following days, Suluan destroys every nearby monster settlement he can locate. Another Nole tribe, 2 goblin villages, and a kobold camp fall before his forces. He kills the gnolls because they consume too much food and resist reliable control. Hundreds of goblins and kobolds instead join the settlement's expanding construction workforce. Their first priority becomes a perimeter wall nearly 2 kilometers long. Workers hammer stakes into the earth and pack mud and reeds around the wooden frame. The result looks unreliable, but it can slow ordinary wilderness attacks. When the final section closes, the system recognizes the basic construction milestone. A territory interface appears and defines a 20-kilometer radius around the camp. Public morale stands at 60, tax revenue remains zero, and expenses continue growing. The population includes barbarians, craftsmen, mercenaries, and hundreds of monster slaves. Existing food reserves will last only 4 months without immediate new production. The crude wall receives low defense durability and stability ratings from the system. Suluan's supposed future kingdom currently resembles an expensive charity for captive monsters. However, the interface also unlocks a complete catalog of territory buildings. A lord's castle would increase authority, governance, stability, and administrative ability. Barracks would improve military training, toughness, discipline, and permanent readiness. Residential houses would strengthen belonging, happiness, population growth, and long-term stability. Farmland, beacon towers, logging camps, markets, roads, wells, and security offices also appear. A river port could transform the 2 waterways into transportation and commercial routes. Before pursuing wealth, Suluan divides his workers between farming, fishing, and construction. He orders sustainable egg collection from waterbird nests along the river reeds. Fish eggs and preserved food reduce grain consumption while improving everyone's health. His organized city blueprint places commerce near the rivers and military facilities toward the east. The future castle will stand centrally upon the high ground facing south across the settlement. Then continued victories raise Suluan to level 13 and place another silver chest in his inventory. The chest contains Stonewall Formation, which transforms into the spell Mud to Stone. Suluan spends 2 skill points and immediately tests the construction magic. Golden energy enters the ground before a solid stone wall rises within seconds. Each casting creates 10 meters of wall, 3 meters high and 1 meter thick. The spell can also reverse stone into mud, making enemy fortifications suddenly vulnerable. 30 magic points are consumed per wall, limiting how often Suluan can cast it. He invests 4 saved attribute points into spirit and expands his magical reserves. Every morning, Suluan converts another section of the crude perimeter into stone. Workers who spent weeks packing mud watch their fragile wall become solid rock. Within days, the frontier camp begins resembling a defensible fortress rather than temporary shelter. While mapping the surrounding territory, Suluan unlocks another valuable system function. A strategic map replaces his rough drawings with a precise miniature of the landscape. Green markers identify allies. Yellow marks mercenaries. Blue represents slaves, and red means enemies. A nearby detection radius reveals living creatures and makes surprise attacks far more difficult. Everything beyond explored territory remains hidden beneath fog, like an unfinished game map. Farming teams prepare hundreds of acres while Suluan chooses potatoes over less productive wheat. Northern potatoes provide several times more food and can produce 2 harvests yearly. A simple river dock also begins supplying enough fish to feed the entire settlement. Surplus catches are salted and dried, creating precious reserves for the approaching winter. Suluan finishes a guarded warehouse before completing his own future castle. Food matters more than comfort. When one failed harvest can destroy an entire territory. He also plans hardened roads, drainage ditches, waste collection, and public sanitation. His modern understanding may not create legendary weapons, but it can prevent medieval disease. While inspecting a drainage channel, Suluan notices black smoke rising beyond the northeastern horizon. 2 smoke columns signal at least 500 enemies moving toward the settlement. He immediately confines every goblin and kobold to prevent betrayal during the attack. Barbarians assemble within moments while mercenaries reluctantly occupy defensive positions. Many barbarians have already advanced into champions through constant combat and successful patrols. Johnson has become a giant axe berserker capable of devastating entire enemy formations. Mercenary Captain Jean advises abandoning the unfinished settlement before the army arrives. Suluan rejects retreat because leaving would destroy every sacrifice already invested here. He promises each brave mercenary 20 acres of farmland after victory. Exceptional performance may even earn a knightly title beneath Suluan's future government. Fear quickly changes into ambition when common soldiers hear rewards beyond imagination. A returning scout then reports more than 700 enemies and several trolls. Trolls regenerate severed limbs and survive wounds that would immediately kill ordinary creatures. Only magic fire or powerful acid can permanently stop their unnatural recovery. Rather than reveal fear, Suluan orders the warehouse opened for a final feast. Warriors receive fish sausages, smoked meat, mushrooms, white bread, and stored ale. They eat silently while considering the army and regenerating giants marching toward them. Afterward, barbarians dig pits, position spikes, and prepare falling rock traps near the eastern gate. Craftsmen pile dried reeds throughout a narrow corridor built behind the entrance. By mid-afternoon, the approaching force becomes visible as a dark wave across the plain. The scout underestimated badly because roughly 1,400 monsters now advance. Goblins, kobolds, gnolls, and towering trolls move together behind crude weapons and savage roars. The defenders face nearly 20 enemies for every available warrior inside the settlement. Jean again urges escape, but Suluan sees hundreds of future construction workers approaching voluntarily. His confidence steadies the barbarians and prevents the mercenaries from collapsing before battle. Weak arrows strike first, bouncing from leather armor or missing their targets completely. The monster commander orders a full charge after the ineffective attack fails. Hidden pits, wooden spikes, and falling stones tear into the front ranks. Numbers carry the survivors forward until they smash through the deliberately weakened eastern gate. The monsters celebrate too early because Suluan intentionally allowed the entrance to break. Stone walls channel the entire charging mass into a narrow corridor without side exits. Two rotating lines of barbarians wait at the far end with raised axes. The front monsters recognize the trap, but pressure from behind prevents retreat. Axes begin falling through skulls, shoulders, and bodies trapped within the crowded passage. Dead monsters pile beneath the living until every new attacker climbs over corpses. The barbarians rotate positions, resting briefly before returning to the relentless killing line. After 15 minutes, Suluan orders them backward and lets the survivors surge ahead. He casts mud to stone across the exit and seals hundreds inside. A reinforced iron gate closes behind them, completing the stone prison. Burning oil and torches rain down while the prepared reeds ignite instantly. Flames spread from body to body throughout the tightly packed crowd. Monsters climb over each other, suffocate beneath the smoke, and burn without escape. Those reaching the walls are killed by waiting mercenaries and exhausted barbarians. The trap becomes a blazing crematorium that destroys more than 600 enemies. Suluan leaves the dying prisoners behind and circles outside through the western gate. Several hundred monsters remain beyond the walls alongside trolls attacking the iron barrier. Their surviving Nole commander forms a crude but recognizable battlefield arrangement. Goblins create a screen, trolls occupy the center, and gnolls prepare attacks from both flanks. Suluan fastens beast face iron armor and forms his barbarians into a wedge. 36 humans charge directly toward an army still containing several hundred monsters. Cobalt arrows fail again before throwing hatchets shatter the goblins' improvised spear wall. The wedge punches through the center, sending frightened kobolds running without resistance. Stronger gnolls attempt to stop the charge, but Suluan's spear breaks bodies apart. Behind him, barbarian champions unleash whirlwind slash and carve through both flanks. The commander's formation collapses, leaving 9 trolls as his final remaining advantage. One troll charges Suluan and swings a massive spiked club at his head. The collision bends his refined spear, although the troll is thrown backward instead. Suluan straightens the bent weapon with his hands as 8 more trolls approach. He activates Frostblade, producing 3 weapons formed from concentrated supernatural ice. The air freezes as the blades cross the battlefield in complete silence. Trolls, gnolls, and goblins within their path stop moving for one terrible moment. Their frozen bodies separate into clean pieces before falling across the earth. Regeneration becomes useless when organs, blood, bone, and flesh freeze completely. Witnessing 9 supposedly invincible trolls die finally destroys the enemy army's courage. The Nole commander turns and runs, abandoning every remaining soldier behind him. Flying Horse carries Suluan across the battlefield faster than any monster can escape. He throws his spear through the commander's back and pins him to the ground. Every survivor lowers its head after seeing the last organized leader die. Suluan orders the exhausted creatures captured instead of wasting valuable labor. The system declares an epic victory and grants more than 15,000 experience points. Suluan reaches level 14 and receives attributes, skill points, gemstones, and 2 silver chests. He also gains advanced tenacity, reducing normal attack damage by half. His health and stamina increase permanently, while stamina recovery becomes twice as fast. Before enjoying those rewards, Johnson reports 3 barbarians suffering fatal-looking wounds. Noli champions opened their leather armor and exposed broken ribs and internal organs. Suluan sets the bones and casts Life Remedy repeatedly upon each injured warrior. The basic spell cannot restore them completely, but it stops the immediate bleeding. Bandages, wound powder, and strict rest give all 3 a genuine chance to survive. Every healthy barbarian advances into the champion class after the battle. Johnson evolves further into a barbarian berserker lord with improved physical traits. Advanced Rage increases strength, speed, pain resistance, duration, and recovery afterward. More than 800 enemies die, fewer than 100 escape, and 500 surrender. Big goblins, kobolds, and several gnolls become another controlled construction force. None resist after witnessing fire-frozen trolls and their commander's violent death. The Eastern Kill Corridor continues burning until midnight and remains unbearable the next morning. Charred bodies fill the passage while the smell destroys everyone's appetite for cooked meat. Workers bury the remains in a massive pit and wash blood from the stones. Stories of Suluan's victory spread, causing nearby monster tribes to abandon the region. Peace finally gives his expanded workforce time to build without constant attacks. The port finishes quickly, fishing increases, and the settlement begins resembling a real town. Then the bookkeeper reveals that Suluan has only 300 gold nars remaining. Food consumption has doubled while taxes and commercial income still do not exist. Johnson returns toward Cult City to bring the remaining barbarian families into the territory. He also carries news that Lord Suluan seeks merchants and permanent trade partners. Meanwhile, construction finishes on the settlement's first proper blacksmith shop. The system imports equipment knowledge and unlocks a catalog of weapons, armor, and materials. Legendary equipment remains unavailable while the best materials cost more than entire kingdoms. Even ordinary finished equipment is beyond Suluan's remaining budget. However, producing those items locally will cost roughly half the system price. Crude monster weapons also suggest an undiscovered iron mine exists somewhere nearby. Suluan cannot seize it yet, but finding it becomes an important future objective. Bruce, an enslaved blacksmith ruined by gambling, takes command of the new forge. Suluan promises improved food and private quarters in exchange for exceptional production. He expands that principle into a complete contribution system for human slaves. Hard work earns better meals, improved housing, and eventually the possibility of freedom. Freedom requires producing value equal to several times the original purchase price. Released workers will remain citizens, pay taxes, and continue supporting Suluan's economy. Productivity immediately rises when every skilled slave receives a visible path upward. Thousands of pounds of iron are recovered from clubs and weapons left after battle. Bruce melts the scrap into usable ingots for tools, repairs, and future armor. The supply is sufficient to equip more than 100 warriors if processed efficiently. Suluan's barbarians currently fight with leather vests and undersized human weapons. Proper iron protection could prevent the terrible wounds suffered against Noli champions. Lacking coal, the forge depends upon charcoal and powerful mechanical bellows. Suluan remembers that preheated air can raise furnace temperature significantly. Bruce already understands traditional folding methods for creating reliable high-grade steel. The process works, but producing enough equipment by hand would require far too long. Suluan opens both silver treasure chests while searching for another solution. The first contains mechanical mastery adapted from a game ability controlling war machines. It grants engineering knowledge involving gears, pulleys, water wheels, transmissions, and automated tools. Advanced versions might eventually unlock steel golems capable of destroying knightly orders. That distant goal requires hidden knowledge and an unknown peach blossom immortal. For now, water-powered machinery can multiply the productivity of his frontier smithy. The second chest contains a North Star celestial elixir filled with shining blue liquid. Drinking it permanently increases either strength or constitution by 3 points. Suluan chooses Constitution, raising the statistic from 25 to 28. Combined with advanced tenacity, the improvement makes ordinary attacks increasingly meaningless. He immediately designs a water-powered forging hammer beside the river. Flowing water turns a wheel connected to a camshaft, controlling the enormous hammer. Craftsmen follow his blueprints and complete the machine within 2 days. The hammer strikes every ingot with identical force, speed, and angle. Steel becomes denser and stronger in a fraction of the time required manually. The system integrates the machine and triples the blacksmith shop's production efficiency. Suluwan next constructs enormous water-powered bellows for the furnace. Preheated air raises the temperature enough to melt scrap iron completely. Better heat produces purer metal, faster smelting, and more consistent steel. Bruce and his apprentices begin working continuously through melting, hammering, quenching, and grinding. Their first custom barbarian axe weighs 30 pounds and matches its wielder's massive frame. Hans tests it by cutting a thick pine log cleanly with one swing. 3 more strikes break a heavy troll club while barely damaging the axe blade. His reckless celebration nearly removes Suluwan's eyebrows before earning a powerful corrective kick. Bruce also produces half-body plate, protecting the chest, arms, and legs without limiting movement. Swords and arrows glance away while heavy impacts fail to cause critical injuries. 35 complete weapon and armor sets must now be finished within 2 weeks. The new equipment promises to transform every barbarian champion into an armored killing machine. Elsewhere, construction remains slow because monster laborers understand strength better than architecture. Goblins and kobolds can dig foundations and carry materials, but cannot design reliable houses. Human craftsmen therefore supervise thick walls made from compressed clay and chopped reeds. These ugly structures remain warm, fire-resistant, and suitable for northern winters. Barbarians harvest timber while larger monsters mix clay and transport heavy materials. Memories of the recent massacre prevent Nolas and big goblins from attempting rebellion. Suluwan protects valuable lumber because northern timber may become the territory's first export. Agriculture becomes equally urgent as food reserves continue shrinking rapidly. Fertile floodplains beside both rivers could eventually support tens of thousands of residents. Without money for irrigation, Suluwan farms the naturally watered riverside plots first. From the hill he watches potato rows, fishing boats, roads, houses, and smoke. The settlement remains poor, disorganized, and unfinished, but every part continues growing. Goblins clear additional land using the only agricultural method they understand well. Suluwan demands 5,000 cultivated acres before winter to guarantee self-sufficiency. Feeding barbarians, mercenaries, craftsmen, and more than 1,000 monsters strains every reserve. His monster workers will remain slaves because many still treat neighboring creatures as food. During a northern patrol, scouts locate another goblin camp containing several hundred inhabitants. Suluwan uses his strategic map to position barbarian squads along every escape route. He attacks with only 2 warriors while the hidden groups wait beyond the settlement. A throwing hatchet kills the goblin leader before he completes his first command. Suluwan's spear destroys the perimeter and sends several larger goblins flying through the camp. Survivors flee directly into the waiting barbarians and surrender within several minutes. Healthy captives are tied together and marched back as replacement construction workers. Continuing northeast, Suluwan's scouts discover an enormous herd of wild buffalo. More than 100 animals graze beneath the distant Candle Mountains. Each weighs over a ton and could pull plows through hard northern soil. Suluwan realizes they could transform farming, transportation, food production, and leather supply. Barbarians surround the herd while he approaches the largest lead bull alone. 3 charging bulls fall unconscious after receiving carefully controlled punches to their foreheads. The lead bull withstands one strike and attacks again with stubborn authority. Suluwan jumps onto its back and survives every violent attempt to throw him. After exhausting itself, the bull lowers its head and accepts defeat. Its submission calms the entire herd because the leader now recognizes Suluwan's dominance. He rides the bull home while more than 100 buffalo thunder behind him. Barbarians flank the moving herd and prevent any animal from escaping. The animals provide affordable power because they survive on grass rather than expensive grain. Nose rings and barbarian experience make even the most aggressive bulls manageable. The final herd contains dozens of cows, bulls, and young calves. Barbarian families take responsibility for taming, breeding, and using the animals. 1 month after entering the wilderness, Suluwan surveys astonishing progress. The river port has expanded, fishing boats multiply, and large water wheels line the bank. Forging hammers and mechanical bellows operate continuously beside the completed smithy. Every section of the 5-meter wall now consists of solid stone. Proper roads connect the castle site, farmland, port, logging camp, and workshops. River stones harden each surface while drainage channels carry wastewater beyond the settlement. Organized streets plan districts. Public sanitation and clean water distinguish Suluan's territory. Goblin overseers and cobalt supervisors now increase productivity among their own species. Their fear of demotion keeps the ambitious managers loyal and ruthlessly efficient. From the unfinished Castle Hill, Suluan sees walls, fields, buffalo boats, and rising smoke. 1 month earlier, nothing occupied this wilderness except monsters, rivers, and empty ground. The territory remains unfinished and nearly penniless, yet it is alive, organized, and expanding. Suluan's rough frontier settlement now stands as the undeniable foundation of his future empire.